kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. So, the kidneys, ito yung dahilan kung bakit, ito yung major organ in the urinary system that produces your urine. So, yung na-form na urine ay dadaan sa ating passageway na ureter. So, since meron tayong dalawang kidneys, meron din tayong dalawang ureters in our body. Nakonektado yan sa urinary bladder. Si urinary bladder naman, yung ating storage ng form urine. And kapag kailangan na nating ilabas or excrete yung na-form na urine, it will exit through your urethra. Your urethra, nagba-vary yan, depende sa gender. Mas mahaba ang sa lalaki compared sa babae. So, ang focus natin dito is not the function of the urinary system, but the structures. Because ang ating subject is histology. So, ano ba yung mga epithelial cell lining ng ureters, urinary bladder? Ano ba yung mga cells involved dyan? Okay. So, yun yung ating focus. No? The first part, the introduction of urinary system, doon lang natin i-discuss yung general functions of the urinary system. Okay? So, this is the picture of your urinary system. We have two kidneys, left and right. And as I've said earlier, bawat isang kidney, meron tayong ureter. No? So, we have ureters for the left kidney and your right kidney na konektado sa ating urinary bladder. Urinary bladder, dito natin i-store yung urine na na-form ni kidney until i-excrete natin yan at mag-exit sa urethra. Okay? So again, urinary system consists of kidneys, ureters, urinary bladder, and the urethra. Functions. Okay, so mainly is to produce urine. Your urine is an excretory product of your body. So it is consists of 95% water and 5% solute or 5% undissolved substances. No? So, nagdedepende ang concentration ng urine sa state of hydration ng tao. Kung mapapansin ninyo, kapag uhaw kayo, yung urine ninyo is mas madilaw. No? Kapag naman well-hydrated kayo, yung kayo nang inom ng tubig, yung urine ninyo, kung mapapansin ninyo, is medyo pale yellow. Okay? Kung minsan pa nga clear. No? It's because your urine is dependent on the concentration of water and the undissolved solute. Basically, 95% water, 5% solute. Pero yan, magba-vary yan. Depende sa state of hydration. Okay? So, your produced urine, ang formation ng ating urine is nasa kidney. And then, it will be transported in the ureters. And then, in the urinary bladder, dun may store, and then excrete sa urethra. So, mainly, the function of your urinary system is to produce your excretory product called urine. Okay? Ano pa? Your urinary system, it's involved in the maintenance of the acid-base balance and the normal extracellular fluid volume. Okay? Pang-apat is, pangatlong function is the endocrine function, which is by releasing two important hormones, erythropoietin and your renin. Alright? So, si erythropoietin is nire-release ng ating kidneys. This erythropoietin acts on the bone marrow to stimulate the production of your erythrocytes. Okay? While your renin is important in regulation of the blood pressure. Why? Because this renin, this substance, will start the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system when there is a change in blood pressure and the sodium content in the blood. No? Magre-respond yan yung ating distal and your, or what we call as the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Mamaya, mababanggit natin yan kung paano nagpo-produce ng renin. Okay? So, again, for the endocrine function, by releasing hormones into the blood, such as erythropoietin and renin. And last is to control the level of calcium in the blood, in body fluids. So those are the main functions of your urinary system. Okay, so let's start with the first part of your urinary system. So pababa tayo, no? From the kidney, going to the ureters, urinary bladder, and then the urethra. Again, ang focus natin dito is more of the structure, no? So, the kidneys, dahil dalawa, is a pair of bean-shaped solid organs. It is located retroperitoneally on the posterior wall of the abdomen, on either side of vertebral column at the lumbar region. So, yan yung location ng ating kidneys, no? Kaya nga, minsan, kapag masakit yung bandang baba mo, sa bandang likod, no? Sabi nila, baka may bato ka sa bato, no? Kasi doon kasi located ang ating kidneys. Ang bawat kidney ay may sukat na 10 to 12 cm by 5 to 6 cm by 3 to 4 cm. Okay? At may bigat, no, na 150 grams each. Okay? So, your kidneys, in the medial border of each kidney, we have this fissure called hilus. So this hilus leads inward to the renal sinus, a deep recess in the organ that contains the renal artery, vein, nerves, lymphatics, and some adipose tissue. Okay. So the stroma, as we all know, every organ meron tayong stroma and the parenchyma. The stroma supports the parenchyma. The parenchyma do the function of the specific organ. So like for example, kung kidney yan, yung parenchyma part, siya yung nag-filter ng blood. No? Kasi alam naman natin, ang kidney, ang ginagawa niya is to filter the blood and then the formation of your urine. Alright? So, that is in the parenchyma part. The stroma is the structure of the kidney or any organ that supports the parenchyma. So your stroma enclosed by a thin fibrous capsule of dense collagenous connective tissue. Interstitial connective tissue is made up of delicate reticular fibers which supports the parenchyma. Okay. Now the parenchyma part consists of the cortex and the medulla. Your medulla, the cortex is the outer, darker part of the kidney. So lagi mong tatandaan, pag cortex, outer yan. Kapag medulla, inner. Okay? So the medulla part is the lighter colored made up of 8 to 15 conical divisions called renal pyramids. Lateral boundaries formed by inward extension of the cortex called renal column. So your renal pyramid, bases of pyramids are direct towards the cortex and its apex is project or fits into the lumen of the minor calyx. Nakita naman na kayo ng pyramid, di ba? Triangle. Triangle siya. So meron siyang tuktok which is the apex and then yung base niya, no? Okay, so para ma-appreciate natin, ito ang ating renal pyramid. Okay, para siyang pyramid naman talaga. Okay, sa triangle. Ito yung base part niya. Yung base part niya ay nakatutok papunta sa cortex. By the way, this is the cortex. This part is the renal cortex. And then the medulla, the renal medulla is from this part. Okay? Yan. Ito ang renal medulla. Kung mapapansin niyo, yung renal cortex natin is mas darker compared dito sa renal medulla natin. And nasa renal medulla yung ating tinatawag na renal pyramids. So, approximately 8 to 15 daw. No? Based on our picture, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 renal pyramids. Okay? So, focus muna tayo sa renal pyramid. Sabi niya, yung base daw ng ating renal pyramid ay nakatutok towards the cortex. Asan ang cortex? Itong part. Ito. Asan ang base? Ito ang base natin. Okay? So, tama naman yung description. At yung apex, yung tuktok, no? Pinaka-point is nakatutok naman daw sa minor calyx. Okay? So, this part is the apex of the renal pyramid. This one. Okay? So, this is the minor calyx. Dito. Okay? So, tama yung description natin doon. So, again, your parenchyma of the kidney consists of renal cortex, darker portion, and then the inner portion, the renal medulla, the lighter portion ng ating kidney. At nasa renal medulla yung ating renal pyramid. Bawat renal pyramid may space yan. Ito, yung mga space na to. And this is your renal column na tinatawag. Okay? So this one is the renal column. In between the two pyramids, we have this space called as the renal column. Okay? So this one is the renal artery which supplies the oxygenated blood papunta sa ating kidney, and then mag-e-exit yung ating deoxygenated blood through our renal vein, pabalik sa circulation. Okay? So this one is the ureter, itong mahabang ito. Okay? This one is your renal pelvis, parang funnel shape siya. Okay? Meron din tayong mga adipose tissue. Nandito, yung mga bilog-bilog na yan. Okay? So, this one is an example of your kidney. Kung gusto nyo ng itsura, kung ano yung itsura niya, ganito yung itsura niya, no? Na ating kidney. Okay? So, next. So, the parenchyma, as I've said, this is the part of the organ that do the main function of your kidney. And since this is the parenchyma, it is made up of this structural and functional unit of your kidney called the nephron. So, itong nephron na to, ito yung dahilan kung bakit nakakapag-filter ng blood ang kidney, kung bakit nakakapag-reabsorb siya ng mga substances, bakit siya nakakapag-form ng urine is because of this nephron. Okay, so, enumerate natin, ano ba yung renal function, no? So, for the renal function, according to Strasinger, we have glomerular filtration. Okay? We have glomerular filtration. Okay, take note yung renal function, no? We have glomerular filtration. Next, we have tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. Okay? And last, we also have the renal blood flow. So, yun yung renal function natin na tinatawag or enumerate ni Strasinger. No, na yung mga yan yung ginagawa daily ng ating kidney. No? Is filter the blood, reabsorption of nutrients, secretion of non-essential substances in our body, and the correct blood flow in the kidney. Okay? So, lahat yon nagagawa because of the nephron present in the kidney. These nephrons are the main or the functional unit of your kidney. So kapag hindi na magawa ni kidney na makapag-reabsorb ng nutrients, mag-secrete ng mga toxic substances, ibig sabihin nasisira na si nephron. At si nephron, tatandaan ninyo, we have 1.5 to 3 millions of nephron present in our kidneys. Okay? At last, na dapat nyo tandaan kay nephron, it is consist of, or one nephron is consist of 5 parts. We have the renal corpuscles, kung nasaan nakalocate yung ating glomerulus for filtration of blood. We have the tubules. Pag sinabing tubules, 4 yan na part. We have the PCT or the proximal convoluted tubule. We have the loop of Henle, the distal convoluted tubule, and the collecting ducts. Okay? Yan ang bumubuo sa ating nephron. Next. So the cortex part part of the kidney, yung part ng nephron is distributed. Yung ibang part ng nephron ay nasa medulla, yung ibang part ng nephron is nasa cortex. Now, in the cortex part, doon natin makikita yung part ng nephron, such as the renal corpuscles, the proximal and the distal convoluted tubule, and part of the collecting ducts. Kasi yung majority ng collecting ducts ay nasa medulla part. Okay? So, in the medulla part of the kidney, we have the loop of Henle present and the greater length of the collecting ducts. So, sir, present ba ang collecting duct with both cortex and medulla? The answer is yes, but the major or the majority of the part of your collecting ducts is in the medulla. Okay? So we also have different types of nephron, the juxtamedullary nephron and the cortical nephrons. So kapag cortical nephrons, ang location yan is nasa cortex. Juxtamedullary nephrons are in the medulla. So your juxtamedullary nephrons have very long Henle's loop extending deep into the medulla. It has a short, thick descending limb, long, thin descending and ascending limb, and thick ascending limb. For the cortical nephrons, it's very short, thin descending limbs and no thin ascending limbs. So this is an example of your nephrons. Nephrons, bakit? Kasi dalawa. No? We have a nephron this side and we also have a nephron on this side. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating nephron, nandiyan ang renal corpuscles, kung saan doon located ang glomerulus. It has a proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, this one is the proximal convoluted tubule. The loop of Henle, itong descending and then the ascending. We have the distal convoluted tubule and your collecting ducts. Itong mahabang ito. Okay? So, isa-isahin natin. Si renal corpuscles, nandito yung glomerulus. Yung glomerulus is a type of capillary. So, pag capillary yan, it is part of, it is a type of a blood vessel. So, pag blood vessel, connected din yan sa other types of blood vessel like the vein and your arteries, no? So, dito yung blood magpo-flow sa renal corpuscles, no? And then, if you filter the glomerulus dito, yung blood, yung mga essential substances o yung mga filterable substances ay pupunta dito sa proximal convoluted tubule. Now, yung blood hindi pupunta dito sa tubules. Tatandaan nyo yan na hindi yan papasok sa tubules unless sira ang glomerulus. Kasi ang normal flow ng blood, iikot lang yan sa glomerulus. And then yung mga essential substances na mapifilter ni glomerulus ay mapupunta sa proximal convoluted tubule or sa tubules natin. So, yung ikot ni ng blood sa glomerulus is mag-exit din sa tinatawag natin efferent arteriole, which is babanggitin ko mamaya, no? Okay. So, ang order natin dyan, ganito. Na-filter ni glomerulus, no? Pag dumaan dito yung blood sa glomerulus, may mga substances na filter. Ngayon, yung mga substances na yun mapupunta sa PCT. Bababa sa loop of Henle. Tandaan, ito, no? Hindi pwede mapagbaliktad. From PCT, descending loop of Henle muna. Descending loop of Henle. Then mag-u-turn yan. Papuntang ascending loop of Henle. Connecting to your collecting ducts. And then, iikot sa ating, from the ascending loop of Henle, connecting to your distal convoluted tubules. And then, itong distal convoluted tubule is connected sa ating collecting ducts. Okay? As you can see, in the collecting ducts, some portion is nasa cortex, but the majority is nandito sa medulla part. Okay? So, that is your nephron, no? Again, the nephron is the main functional unit of your kidney. At the proximal end of each nephron, there is a closed thin wall expansion of the tubules that is deeply invaginated to form a cup-shaped hollow structure, and that is called as your Bowman's capsule. Tandaan ninyo, the Bowman's capsule encloses or houses the glomerulus. Okay? Bowman's capsule. So So your Bowman's capsule, ito yung structure natin dyan. No? It is consists of a double-walled cup composed of a simple squamous epithelium. So since double-walled, meron siyang layer na dalawa, the parietal and the visceral layer. Pag sinabing parietal, this is the external layer of your Bowman's capsule. Kapag visceral layer, it is the internal layer of the Bowman's capsule, and it is consists of podocytes. These podocytes are intertwining foot, no, structures. So the primary process giving rise to numerous secondary processes are called as pedicels or foot processes or the podocytes that embrace the capillaries of the glomerulus. Secondary processes interdigitated at periodic distance at 12 nanometer, forming the filtration slits. So the space in between the visceral and the parietal layer is called as the Bowman's space. Okay? Tandaan na, the space in between the visceral and the parietal. Pag visceral, inner layer. Pag parietal, the external layer of the Bowman's capsule. So the space between is what we call as the Bowman's space. So yung Bowman's space, dito na makikita yung mga filtered substance from the glomerulus pababa sa PCT. That is why your Bowman's capsule is, or this space is continuous with the lumen of the proximal tubule. Okay. So pag-usapan natin yung renal corpuscles. So your renal corpuscles occupied by a globular tuft of highly convoluted capillaries called the glomerulus. So your glomerulus is defined as a tuft of capillaries, no, that is that occupies the renal corpuscles. So its surroundings, cup-shaped epithelial capsule constitutes the renal corpuscles. So your renal corpuscles, guys, it has two poles, no, two opposite poles, the vascular pole and the urinary pole. Okay. So pag sinabing vascular pole, it is where the afferent arteriole and the efferent arteriole are found. And also, nandito rin yung ating juxtaglomerular apparatus. Now, pag sinabing juxtaglomerular apparatus, it consists of two parts also. No? The macula densa and the juxtaglomerular cells. Okay? Pag sinabing juxtaglomerular apparatus, masyadong broad yan, no? So, it is consists of macula densa and juxtaglomerular cells. So, dito na papasok yung renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system natin. Okay. While the urinary pole, it is where the proximal convoluted tubule begins. So, the endothelium of the glomerular capillaries is fenestrated. So, pag fenestrated, meron niyang mga slit pore na kung saan dito pwedeng pumasok yung mga small substances filterable by the glomerulus. Fenestrated are slit pore. Okay? May mga distance na maliliit yung endothelial lining ng ating glomerulus. And the term is fenestrated. In between the glomerular capillaries is occupied by mesangium. A connective tissue consists of mesangial cells which are phagocytic. Okay. So balikan natin. This is your renal corpuscle. Okay? Sabi natin dun kanina, we have the urinary pole and the vascular pole. Saan ang urinary pole? Nasaan ang vascular pole? The vascular pole is in this part. Okay? Dito sa part na to. The urinary pole ay nasa baba. This one. Connecting nasa tubules yan. So your vascular pole consists of what? Afferent. This one is the afferent and the efferent arteriole. While the urinary pole is consists of the tubule. Tama ba? The PCT. Dito na yung PCT, oh. Okay? So basically, the renal corpuscles has two poles, the vascular pole and the urinary pole. Vascular pole consists of afferent and efferent arteriole, while the urinary pole consists of your tubule. Okay? Now, ito yung Bowman's capsule na tinatawag natin. Itong parang U shape na ito. Na kung saan nakahouse yung ating glomerulus. Ito ang ating glomerulus. Okay? So it is consists of approximately 8 capillary tuft. Paikot-ikot lang yan siya. And pag pinalaki pa natin itong side ng ating glomerulus, dyan na natin makikita yung podocytes, no? So, ganito yung renal blood flow. It will start with your renal artery. Okay? Your renal artery. So, your renal artery carries your oxygenated blood. So, papasok na yan sa kidney natin. Ngayon, ang artery, lumiliit yan. Okay? Ang mas maliit na form ng artery is what we call as arteriole. Okay? So, from the renal artery, it goes to your afferent arteriole. Okay, dito. So, dito yung blood, no? And then, after the arteriole, it will be your capillaries. Tama? As we all know, typically, your capillaries, diyan nangyayari yung exchanges of nutrients, blood exchange, diyan din. At yung capillaries natin dito sa ating nephron is your glomerulus. So dito iikot yung blood from the afferent going to your glomerulus. Iikot dito. At si glomerulus ang gagawin niya is i-filter niya yung blood. Kaya nagkakaroon ng function ang ating kidney to filter the blood because of this structure, the glomerulus. So, filter niya yung mga substances, filter. Pag filter niya sa glucose, dito yan mapupunta sa Bowman space. Ito yung Bowman space natin. At itong Bowman space connected sa PCT na. Okay? So, tatandaan ninyo, walang blood na mapupunta dito sa Bowman space. Ang nandi dito is yung ultrafiltrate of your plasma. Walang blood. Unless damage ang glomerulus. Pag damage ang glomerulus, pwedeng maliberate yung blood at mapunta dito sa Bowman space, pababa sa ating tubules, pababa sa ureter, sa urinary bladder, sama sa urine, at makikita nyo, pula yung ihi ninyo. No? So, balik tayo. Iikot yung blood sa glomerulus, mafi-filter ni glomerulus yung mga ibang substances from the blood, and then, pagkatapos niyang umikot sa glomerulus, exit sa efferent arteriole. Okay? Exit sa efferent arteriole. Babalik na ba sa circulation? Hindi pa. Kasi after efferent arteriole, we have your peritubular capillaries. Yung mga substances na hindi mafi-filter ni glomerulus na dapat i-excrete ng katawan, is pwede pang masikret through the peritubular capillaries. So doon na pumapasok yung isa sa function ng kidney na tubular secretion. Okay? So, after the efferent arteriole, peritubular capillaries. Next, tatawid na ito papuntang vasa recta. After the peritubular capillaries, tatawid papuntang vasa recta at mag-exit na sa renal vein as deoxygenated blood, as a filtered blood. No? Na-filter na ng ating kidney. Okay? So, for the renal blood flow, uulitin ko, ganito ang kanyang process. According to Strassenger, the blood will enter the renal artery. Oxygenated ito. Then, after artery, mas maliit na artery, arteriole. It will enter the nephron through your afferent arteriole. Then, after the afferent arteriole, it is connected to your glomerulus, which is the capillary. Yan na mangyayari yung exchanges, no? And then, the blood will exit to your efferent arteriole. After glomerulus, efferent arteriole. Your efferent arteriole is connected to your peritubular capillaries, which is nagkakaroon pa ulit ng secretions dyan. No? Then after peritubular capillaries, the vasa recta is connected to your renal vein. Exit ang ating blood sa kidney, no? Through your renal vein. Klaro? Sana klaro tayo, ha? Okay. So that is the vascular pole. No? Your urinary pole is your consists of or connected with your PCT. Okay? So after the after the Bowman space, you have your PCT. Then after PCT, ano yung sinabi natin? The loop of Henle, ano muna? Descending and then ascending. Now, after ascending loop of Henle, the DCT or distal convoluted tubule, and then the collecting ducts. Okay? So, binanggit din natin dyan yung tinatawag na juxtaglomerular apparatus. Nasaan siya located? Nasa vascular pole. Okay? Bakit? Kasi ang ating juxtaglomerular apparatus, we have the macula densa and your juxtaglomerular cell. Okay? Ang location ng macula densa natin ay nasa DCT or the distal convoluted tubule. Ito yung macula densa natin. Okay? Nandito sa DCT. Okay? Yung atin namang juxtaglomerular cell ay nasa afferent arteriole. That is why, kung tatanungin natin, nasa ang location ng ating juxtaglomerular apparatus, based dito sa ating description, nasa vascular pole siya. Why? Because the macula densa is located in the DCT and the juxtaglomerular cell is located in your afferent arteriole. Okay? Nandito. Tingnan niyo yung location. DCT nandito. Yung afferent nandito. Portion of DCT nandito sa kasi connecting pa yan sa collecting ducts natin. So ngayon, discuss ko kung ano ba yung importance nitong juxtaglomerular apparatus. So your juxtaglomerular apparatus senses changes in the blood pressure and the sodium content in the blood. Okay? Again, the juxtaglomerular apparatus senses the changes in the blood pressure and sodium content in the blood. Now, kung ma-detect niya na, mababa yung blood pressure, mababa rin yung sodium content. Si macula densa yung magse-sense nun. Part of the juxtaglomerular apparatus. So, your macula densa senses the changes in the blood pressure and the salt content. Now, what your macula densa will do is to trigger or to signal the juxtaglomerular cell located in the afferent arteriole to produce your renin. So the function of your juxtaglomerular cell is the production of renin. Dun sa first part ng ating slide, di ba, binanggit ko doon, sa function ng urinary system is the production of renin, which regulates the blood pressure. Yun yung nangyayari. Yun yung mechanism. Unang-una, ang juxtaglomerular cells natin, juxtaglomerular apparatus consists of macula densa and juxtaglomerular cell. Ang main function ng ating juxtaglomerular apparatus is to sense the changes in the blood pressure and salt content, or sodium content. And it will release renin. Yun yung pinaka-function ng juxtaglomerular cell apparatus. So paano? Kapag na-sense ni macula densa, nagkaroon ng changes, iti-trigger niya si juxtaglomerular cell to produce renin. Okay? So, kapag na-produce na yung renin ni juxtaglomerular cell, mai-incorporate na yan sa blood natin because sa afferent arteriole, na kung saan dito located ang juxtaglomerular cell, at pag nag-release ng renin yan, mapupunta directly sa blood. Iikot sa glomerulus, exit sa efferent arteriole, and dyan na magsisimula yung renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, but yun ay i-discuss na natin further sa analysis of urine and other body fluids. Kasi ang focus ng histology is structure lang muna tayo. Okay? So, again, basically, the juxtaglomerular cell, ang function niya is to produce renin. Okay? So, ganito ang itsura niya. So, this is your renal corpus cells, consists of your glomerulus. This is the distal convoluted tubule. Okay? This part. Okay. Okay. So, next, after the renal corpus cells, the PCT, or the proximal convoluted tubule. It is the longest segment of the nephron which are made up of convoluted and straight portion. It forms the main bulk of the kidney cortex. Aside from that, tandaan nyo na rin to, that the PCT is the major reabsorption site and secretion site. No? It is the major reabsorption site and secretion site of substances. Because, sinabi ko kanina, isa sa renal function, tubular secretion, tubular reabsorption. Saan nangyayari yan? Majority nasa PCT. Okay? So the lining epithelium of your PCT is simple cuboidal epithelium with brush borders. Large cells with wide lumen, therefore transverse section, show only 3 to 5 spherical nuclei. Apical cytoplasm has numerous canaliculi and between the bases of microvilli. So after the PCT, we have your Henle's loop, loop of Henle, hairpin turn, maraming tawag dyan. No? But ang binanggit dito is Henle's loop. No? So your Henle's loop is a U-shaped structure consisting of a thick and thin descending limb and a thin and thick ascending limb. So from PCT, laging tatandaan, hindi pwedeng magkabaliktad ito. DCT mo, descending loop of Henle muna and then ascending loop of Henle going to your distal convoluted tubule. Hindi pwedeng PCT then ascending loop of Henle, no? Mababaliktad yung ating sequence doon. Okay? So your descending limb consists of a thick to thin. Thick to thin. From the ascending lift, thin to thick. Tingnan natin. So from your PCT, okay, so this is your PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, and this is your descending loop of Henle. As you can see, thick to thin, and then your ascending loop of Henle, thin to thick, connecting to your DCT. Okay? Tandaan yun, ha? Okay, balikan natin. So your thick limbs are lined by simple cuboidal epithelial cells. The thin limbs is lined by simple squamous epithelium. Okay? So pag thick, simple cuboidal. Kapag thin, simple squamous. Simple, ibig sabihin, single layer lang. Okay, so this is an example of your loop of Henle, the descending, then the ascending. Next is the distal convoluted tubule. So the lining epithelium of DCT is simple cuboidal. So it differs from proximal convoluted tubule because absence of brush borders, no apical canaliculi unlike your PCT. Cells are flatter and smaller and more nuclei are seen. Cells in close contact with afferent arteriole become modified and usually become columnar and their nuclei closely packed. Modified segment become darker in color, called the macula densa. Okay, si macula densa, ito yung nagsisense ng ionic content and water volume, which may signal the release of your renin. Okay, macula densa is part of your juxtaglomerular apparatus. Juxtaglomerular apparatus is adjacent to renal corpuscles. The tunica media of the afferent arteriole has modified smooth muscle cells called the juxtaglomerular cell, which produce the renin. Okay, so your juxtaglomerular cell and your macula densa of the DCT comprise the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Binanggit ko nito kanina. Okay, so we have your renal corpuscles. Okay, a picture of a histologic slide presenting your renal corpuscles. This one. Okay. So next is the collecting duct or the collecting tubules. So your tubule is lined by a simple cuboidal epithelium that becomes columnar. The collecting duct which open at the apex of the renal pyramid into the lumen of the minor calyx. Okay? Bakit? Kasi nga, your collecting duct, yung ibang part niya nasa cortex, but the majority is in the medulla. And as we all know, in the medulla, nandoon na yung ating calyces. So the renal pelvis, the renal calyces, and the ureters are lined by what we call as transitional epithelial tissue or transitional epithelium. Muscularis mucosae and submucosae are absent, so we only have tunica muscularis that is made up of anastomosing bundles of smooth muscle that are of varying orientation. So your renal pelvis is characterized as a funnel-shaped expansion of the upper end of the ureter, which divides into two long branches, the major calyces or the major calyx, and these in turn have short branches called the minor calyces. Okay? So, this is the example of your ureter. Okay? Kapag kinat mo yan, you have your mucosa, muscularis, and the unwed tissue. Your urinary bladder is lined also by a transitional epithelial tissue or transitional epithelium with a thick muscular coat made up of 3 layers of smooth muscle. So your urinary bladder is or can expand, no? They are flexible. Kasi ganito ang itsura kapag ka empty yung ating urinary bladder, ganito naman ang itsura kapag ka puno siya ng urine. Kapag naiihi ka na, ihing-ihi ka na dahil puno na yung pantog mo. Okay? Now, the male urethra, last part ng ating urinary system, is different from your female urethra. Unang-una sa function, ang male urethra is it act as the passageway for the urine and also for the semen. Okay? Kaya dito binanggit, both the urinary tract, this is the portion, the terminal portion of both urinary tract and the reproductive tract. Dito rin kasi dumadaan yung semen natin na tinatawag. So your urethra consists of 3 segments: prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and the penile urethra. What I want you to remember here is the structure or the epithelial cell lining. No? So, as I've said earlier, your urethra or the male urethra is longer than the female urethra. Approximately 18 centimeter in length. But it varies. No? Depende sa lalaki. Okay? So, we have the segments of the male urethra, prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and the penile urethra. So, pag prostatic, ang lining niya is transitional epithelium. Pag membranous urethra, okay, it is lined by a pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. And your penile urethra, which courses through the whole length of the penis to its external opening, the meatus, on the glans penis, is lined by a pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium that becomes a stratified squamous epithelium habang papalapit siya dun sa line, sa opening ng ating penis. Okay? So, again, the segments, the prostatic, the membranous, and the penile urethra. Yung pagkakasunod-sunod nila, from your urinary bladder, kung male yan, no? The prostatic segment, then followed by the membranous, and then exit na sa penile urethra. Excrete na yung urine. Now, for female, ang haba niya is only 25 to 30 millimeter. May mga nalilito dito during quiz, no? Millimeter. Yung kanina, 18 centimeter. May mga nalilito na, Sir, bakit 18 lang naman pala yung sa male and sa female is 25 to 30? Check for the unit. Okay? Centimeter yung ginamit natin. Doon sa male, dito naman is millimeter. So 25 to 30 millimeter long, it is lined by a stratified squamous epithelium. So function solely as urinary tract. Daanan lang ng ihe. No? Kasi sa reproductive tract ng babae, iba ang dinadaanan niya. Okay? So, may mga hindi ba ako nabanggit? Dito. Balik tayo dito. Sa renal pelvis, calyces, and ureters. Pull out lang natin yung presentation natin. Ayun. Okay. So, the renal pelvis, this part, is a funnel shape. Nakita na ba kayo ng funnel? Embudo. Yan. Connected to your ureter. Now, your renal pelvis, meron siyang mga short branches that we call as the calyces. So, we have the major calyx, this one, and then the minor calyx, which is connected to the apex of each renal pyramid. So, basically, ganito ang order natin dyan. Your nephron, okay, which consists of your renal corpuscles. After the renal corpuscles, your PCT, your loop of Henle, descending muna, then ascending, the distal convoluted tubule. After distal, collecting ducts. And then, exit na yon papunta sa minor calyces natin. After the minor calyces, major calyces or the major calyx. After the major calyx, renal pelvis. After renal pelvis, ureter, urinary bladder, and then excrete sa urethra. Okay? So, ganun yung organization natin kung paano na-form at na-transfer ang urine, formed urine from your nephron or the kidneys going to the ureter, urinary bladder, and the urethra. Okay? So, that will be all for our discussion in urinary system. Any questions or clarifications so far? We will have our 5 minutes break before we proceed with respiratory system. Any questions or clarifications? Do you have questions? Any questions or clarifications?